Hi everyone, welcome and thank you one and all for yesterday's thumbs up and comments. I really appreciate it. Something is up with YouTube and I'm not the only one desperate to know what the heck is going on. More and more creators are coming out saying they can't do this anymore, and more are actually beginning to come out and talk openly about their channels. The thing is that YouTube has made changes to the algorithm, and suddenly many of us had our income cut by almost half. There does appear to be some kind of manipulation going on, because I cannot, for instance, promote a video. The button does not work for me. I can't even see a hype button on other people's channels, never mind apply it to my own. I have predicted that eventually the likes of YouTube will become the new mainstream media, and us smaller creators, those with 100,000 or less subscribers, will fall away. And it appears to be where we are heading, because we shall simply not be able to afford to make these videos anymore. It takes up a lot of time which can be spent doing other income producing work. I'm honestly so sorry for harping on about this, but I personally am battling to keep this channel going. I love it and I love you and I want to continue, but if the current situation continues, I may not be able to. Anyway guys, for now we soldier on. Okay guys, tell me, is Harry in deep doggy do or not? Let's analyze based on what we know so far. Harry and others like Elton John, Liz Hurley, Doreen Lawrence, etc., initiated a case against ANL, Associated Newspapers Limited, alleging unlawful information gathering and breaches of privacy. Their case basically hinged on one thing, one piece of what they thought was concrete evidence. The rest, in my opinion, is hearsay and opinion. That one piece of supposed concrete evidence was a confession of hacking by private investigator Gavin Burrows. Now, 4 years later, it appears that the statement is a forgery. Burrows stated in a new affidavit that the original 2021 statement on which the case hinges was prepared by others without his knowledge. In this supposed 2021 statement, Burrows supposedly claimed to have hacked voicemails, tapped landlines and accessed medical and financial records at the request of a journalist at the Mail on Sunday. On Tuesday, the court finally heard that in September, thus nearly 2 months ago, Burrows had provided ANL's lawyers with a statement claiming that he had no hand in the 2021 statements and that it wasn't his signature below the statement. Now, somewhere buried deep in the recesses of my brain, I can sort of remember that Gavin Burrows had previously denied this 2021 statement, and indeed he says that he had in 2023 already made it very clear that he did not make this statement and did not sign it. He also says that he only worked on one case for ANL, and that involved a story about Richard Branson, and that his work on that did not include hacking or any other illegal activity. So my very first question is if this was known in 2023 already, why wasn't it all exposed and maybe a hearing set up and all of this heard in a hearing and the case dismissed? Why waste the court's time and money for nearly 4 years? Or was it put to the court, but because of celebrity and royalty, it was indeed heard and proceeded on regardless? I don't know. There is, however, another player in all of this before we even get to the complainants, and that is, in my opinion, a man who is mentally unstable, an ex-journalist called Graeme Johnson, who himself spent some time in prison for hacking and other nefarious actions. Johnson was the main character or witness or whistleblower, whatever you want to call him, in the Mirror case. MGN, which also publishes the Sunday Mirror and the Sunday People, also denied the allegations of unlawful gathering of information. Now, in his original statement, Johnson claimed that he was instructed by the deputy editor, Mark Thomas, and with the full knowledge of the editor, Tina Weaver, to intercept voicemails of Denise Welsh in 2001. Although he himself admitted to only a few incidents, he accused MGN of using private investigators for phone hacking, phone tapping, email hacking, and intrusive surveillance. Johnson said he was involved in pulling phone bills and buying sensitive police reports. Although Johnson did not admit to it exactly, he was also accused of illegal activity and dishonesty while he was working at News of the World. Well, he denied it at first, but a BBC interview in which he confessed that he fabricated stories was actually played in court. Okay, so this is the background, more or less, and in short, of how Burroughs came into the story. So, according to Johnson, Gavin Burroughs wrote abusive tweets about him. Johnson said of Burroughs, "This is not unusual in this story. These were the types of people," referring to Burroughs, "which were employed by the newspapers to do their dirty work. If you ask them questions, they turn nasty." Okay, so back to Gavin Burroughs. He has now drawn up a 30-page witness statement with the assistance of independent lawyers, in which he states that he does not recognize the 2021 witness statement issued in his name. He describes the 2021 statement as completely false, complete rubbish, and a complete fantasy. In this new statement, Burroughs describes how he was approached by Graeme Johnson and how Johnson would not leave him alone. Johnson told Burroughs that he was working on a phone hacking claim or claims against newspapers, and he wanted Burroughs to help him with his research. Johnson also introduces Burroughs to a supposed paralegal colleague, Dan Waddell, who paid Burroughs £600 every time he advised them. Once Johnson even offered Burroughs £3,000 to write a statement, and then when Burroughs frowned at that, he insisted that it was only a joke. Burroughs also states that Johnson and Waddell asked him repeatedly whether he had done any work for the Daily Mail, which he repeatedly denied. According to Burroughs, Johnson and Waddell told him that the newspapers did not want the publicity or the cost of a court case, so they would instead just pay or settle the claims. What Waddell described as the perfect scam and a gravy train. Now here comes the absolute shocker. Graeme Johnson also introduced Burroughs to ANL Sangani, a solicitor. He says Sangani even came to his house in early 2021 and brought hundreds of pounds worth of flowers and a 200-pound bottle of whiskey. Allegedly, she told him to only deal with Johnson and promised him a monthly retainer. He was promised £5,000 per month. She also asked him whether he had ever worked for the Mail, and again he said he did not. Now, ladies and gentlemen, hang on to your hats, deep breath in, and let it out slowly. Okay, are you calm? All right. So Burroughs says that a few weeks later, he, Burroughs, was summoned to a meeting with Miss Sangani and Graeme Johnson in London Square. And there they were joined by, ta-da, David Sherborne, Harry and the other bigwig's lawyer. Sherborne asked him about his investigative techniques and how much he charged for surveillance before he left. In late 2021, Johnson asked Burroughs to go to Cyprus and track down one of the CID officers in the Stephen Lawrence case, which he did. And then in early 2023, he indeed heard that Lady Lawrence had brought a claim against Associated Newspapers based on evidence which he supposedly obtained from former police officers. Burroughs says he immediately contacted the Mail and wrote a statement in March 2023 in which he categorically denied claims made by Harry and others. Wow. Okay, now what? Burroughs' statement was made public after ANL's lawyer applied to cross-examine Burroughs. Sherborne described Burroughs' statement as, and I quote, a grotesque inclusion which is meant to be an attack on parts of the legal team and which should not be permitted. Now, is Sherborne lying, or is he now afraid that he will be found guilty of fraud and legal misconduct? And how much did his clients know? Now, good golly, I mean, regardless, this is bad. And I personally have more questions than answers. So the solicitor, Sangani, offered Burroughs a retainer of £5,000, plus all expenses, and remember the expensive gifts. So who was she working for? Who was her client? It could ultimately not have been Johnson, because he does not and did not have that kind of money. So who is ultimately behind this scam? Sherborne or one of his wealthy clients? People, this is huge. Someone will or should ultimately go to prison for this. Remember how Charles and palace advisors told Harry to stop it and drop all these lawsuits? Remember that? Well, now we know why. If in some way it can be proven that Harry or any of the others knew that Burroughs' statement was not 100% real or true, he can be in very, very bad trouble. Deep, deep shit. And I mean, one of the other questions is that if it is found that this case continued, regardless of the fact that Burroughs' statements were false, and either the lawyer, Sherborne, and or his clients knew that, and this whole case is thrown out, then who is going to pay ANL's legal costs? Will it be all of them, Elton John and whoever else? Will it be all of them? Or will it only be the one or two people remaining in this case? Remember, a number of them took settlements and buggered off. I don't know, but this is not good at all. And there's so much more to this. This goes very far. This is in fact terrifying. But these are the basics, so we'll talk about the rest tomorrow. Now we also know why Charles is refusing to remove Harry's titles or diminish his status, because it is highly unlikely Harry will be arrested being the king's son. But as Harry Windsor or Harry Mountbatten Windsor, he may very well be. Okay, guys, tell you what, this old voice doesn't want to anymore. Now I'm still suffering from a bit of hay fever, and so on. It's summer, spring. Anyway, right. We will continue this at some point tomorrow or maybe even later today. We'll see how things work out. So until then, please take good care of yourselves. Bye.